The cold reality of a loveless marriage. Isabella Hart stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, watching the city lights twinkle below like distant stars. 2 years had passed since she became Mrs. Ethan Blackwood, yet she felt more alone than ever. The luxurious apartment was filled with expensive furniture and priceless art, but it was empty of warmth, empty of love, empty of the life she had once dreamed of having. A marriage without touch. Her wedding day felt like a lifetime ago. Isabella remembered the elegant ceremony, the hundreds of guests, the flash of cameras capturing what everyone believed was a fairy tale romance. But fairy tales were supposed to have happy endings, and this was anything but happy. From their wedding night onward, Ethan had maintained a physical and emotional distance that felt like an ocean between them. He slept in the master bedroom, while she occupied the guest suite. They were roommates, sharing a last name, nothing more. The business transaction. Isabella understood why she was here. Her father's company had been drowning in debt, threatened by bankruptcy that would destroy everything her family had built over 3 generations. Ethan Blackwood, the brilliant and ruthless CEO of Blackwood Industries, had offered a solution, a merger between their companies, sealed with a marriage contract. Isabella had agreed to save her family, sacrificing her dreams of true love for duty and responsibility. Daily life in isolation. Every morning, Isabella woke up alone. She would prepare herself carefully, choosing elegant dresses and styling her long, dark hair, hoping that maybe today Ethan would actually see her. But he never did. He left for the office before dawn and returned late at night, sometimes not at all. When they did cross paths, his conversations were brief and professional. He would ask if she needed anything, if the household staff was adequate, if she required more money in her account. Everything except what she truly needed: his attention, his affection, his heart. The charity gala preparation. One Thursday afternoon, Harper Walsh, Ethan's efficient assistant, called Isabella. "Mrs. Blackwood, Mr. Blackwood requires your presence at the annual Blackwood Industries charity gala this Saturday evening. Address will be delivered tomorrow. The car will pick you up at 7. Click." The call ended before Isabella could respond. This was how things worked in her marriage. She was informed, not consulted. She was an accessory to be displayed when necessary. Meeting Charlotte. Isabella called her best friend Charlotte Rivers, the one person who knew the truth about her marriage. They met at a quiet cafe away from the social circles that watched Isabella's every move. Charlotte, a successful photographer with wild red curls and a free spirit, listened as Isabella poured out her frustration. 2 years, Charlotte. 2 years of living like a ghost in that beautiful prison. He doesn't talk to me. He doesn't look at me. I could disappear tomorrow, and I don't think he would even notice until someone told him his wife was missing. Charlotte reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You deserve so much more than this, Bella. You're kind, talented, beautiful. You gave up your dreams of becoming an art curator to save your family. But what about your happiness? What about your life?" The Art Foundation. Isabella had found one escape from her loneliness. She volunteered at the Heritage Art Foundation, working with Sophia Chen, a renowned art historian who became her mentor. Through the foundation, Isabella helped preserve and restore classical paintings. It was the only time she felt truly alive, surrounded by beauty and history, using her knowledge and passion for something meaningful. But even this small joy felt hollow when she returned each evening to the cold emptiness of the penthouse. The evening before the gala. The dress arrived as promised, a stunning emerald green gown that hugged her curves perfectly. Isabella tried it on, staring at her reflection. She looked like someone else, someone confident and desired. But she knew the truth. The dress was chosen by Harper, probably approved by some fashion consultant. Ethan wouldn't even notice what color she wore. To him, she was just another business asset to be presented properly. That night, Isabella lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling. She thought about their wedding vows, about the promises they had made, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. But what about love? What about honor? What about cherishing one another? Those promises seemed to apply only to her, not to the man she had married. Ethan's world. What Isabella didn't know was that Ethan Blackwood was fighting his own battles. In his office high above the city, he worked late into the night, reviewing contracts and financial reports. He had built his empire through discipline and control, never allowing emotions to cloud his judgment. His marriage to Isabella was a strategic move, beneficial for both families. He had convinced himself that keeping his distance was the right thing to do. She was young, beautiful, and full of life. She deserved better than a man who knew nothing about love, who had been raised by a cold mother and an absent father, who understood profit margins better than human feelings. But lately, something had been changing. He found himself thinking about her at odd moments, the way she moved through the penthouse like a graceful dancer, the sound of her voice when she spoke on the phone with her friends, the scent of her perfume that lingered in the hallway after she passed. He pushed these thoughts away, buried them under work and responsibility. Emotions were dangerous. They made people weak, vulnerable, prone to mistakes. The morning of the gala. Saturday morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the penthouse windows. Isabella prepared herself slowly, taking extra care with her appearance. She styled her hair in soft waves, applied makeup that enhanced her natural beauty, and slipped into the emerald gown. She looked stunning, and some small part of her hoped that maybe tonight would be different. Maybe Ethan would finally see her, really see her. As 7 o'clock approached, Isabella waited in the living room. Ethan emerged from his bedroom, devastatingly handsome in a black tuxedo. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his strong jaw clean-shaven. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Isabella thought she saw something flicker in his expression, but it vanished so quickly she wondered if she had imagined it. "You look presentable," he said, his voice flat and businesslike. "The car is waiting." Presentable. The word stung like a slap. Isabella swallowed her disappointment and followed him to the elevator, maintaining the careful distance they always kept. As they descended toward the waiting limousine, she steeled herself for another evening of pretending, another night of playing the perfect wife to a man who treated her like furniture. But tonight, the universe had different plans. Tonight, everything would change. The glittering ballroom. The Grand Plaza Hotel ballroom was transformed into a wonderland of crystal chandeliers and golden lights. Hundreds of guests mingled beneath the sparkling ceiling, their laughter and conversation creating a symphony of wealth and power. Isabella entered on Ethan's arm, feeling the weight of curious eyes upon them. The Blackwoods were always the center of attention, and tonight was no exception. Photographers snapped pictures as they made their entrance, capturing what looked like the perfect couple. Ethan guided her through the crowd with a possessive hand on her lower back, but Isabella knew it was all for show. He was performing for the cameras, maintaining the image of the devoted husband. The moment they were away from prying eyes, his hand would drop and the coldness would return. She had learned to accept this reality, but it never stopped hurting. Conversations and pretense. They moved from group to group, Ethan discussing business deals and market trends with other executives. Isabella stood beside him, smiling politely, nodding at appropriate moments. She was decoration, a beautiful ornament that proved Ethan Blackwood had everything a successful man should have. No one asked her opinion. No one seemed interested in what she thought or felt. She was simply Mrs. Blackwood, the silent wife. After an hour of this torture, Isabella excused herself to visit the powder room, grateful for a moment alone. She stood before the mirror, touching up her lipstick, and wondering how many more of these events she would have to endure. Charlotte's words echoed in her mind. "You deserve so much more than this." But what choice did she have? Her family's company depended on this marriage. Breaking their agreement would destroy everything her father had worked for. The unexpected encounter. When Isabella returned to the ballroom, Ethan was deep in conversation with a group of investors. She didn't want to interrupt, so she stood nearby, waiting. That's when she heard a warm voice beside her. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help noticing you've been standing alone. Would you like some company?" Isabella turned to find a handsome man with kind eyes and a genuine smile. He had sandy brown hair, an athletic build, and an air of confidence that felt welcoming rather than intimidating. He extended his hand. "Oliver Monroe. I'm with Monroe Enterprises. We handle international shipping and logistics." "Isabella Blackwood," she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was warm and friendly, so different from Ethan's cold formality. "Ah, the famous Mrs. Blackwood. I've heard wonderful things about your work with the Heritage Art Foundation. The restoration project you completed last month on the Renaissance collection was quite impressive." Isabella's eyes widened in surprise. "You know about that?" "I make it my business to know about things that matter," Oliver said with a smile. "Art and culture are important, even in a world obsessed with profit margins. My mother was an artist, so I grew up appreciating creativity and passion." A real conversation. For the first time in months, Isabella found herself engaged in a genuine conversation. Oliver asked about her restoration techniques, her favorite artists, her dreams for the foundation's future. He listened intently to her answers, asked thoughtful follow-up questions, and shared his own experiences growing up surrounded by art. Isabella felt herself relaxing, smiling naturally, coming alive in a way she hadn't in 2 years. "You should see the collection we acquired last month. 18th century maritime paintings from England. Some of them need restoration work. I would love to get your expert opinion on them." "That sounds fascinating," Isabella replied, her eyes bright with interest. "I would be honored to take a look." "Wonderful. Perhaps we could arrange a viewing next week. I could take you to lunch afterward, and we could discuss the foundation's work in more detail." Isabella hesitated. Something about accepting felt dangerous, but she couldn't quite identify why. Oliver was simply being friendly, offering a professional opportunity. There was nothing inappropriate about it. "I would like that very much," she said finally. The touch. As they talked, Oliver gently touched her arm to emphasize a point about a particular painting style. It was a casual, innocent gesture, but to Isabella it felt electric. She realized with a start that this was the first time in 2 years that a man had touched her with warmth and genuine interest, not the cold, obligatory touches Ethan gave for appearance's sake, but a real human connection. Oliver seemed to sense something shift in the air. He leaned slightly closer, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. "You have a remarkable passion for art, Isabella. It's refreshing to meet someone who cares about beauty and history in a world that seems to only value money and power." "Thank you," Isabella whispered, feeling a blush creep up her cheeks. "That means more to me than you know." The interruption. "Isabella." The voice was cold as ice, cutting through their conversation like a blade. Isabella turned to find Ethan standing behind her, his gray eyes storming with an emotion she had never seen before. His jaw was clenched, his posture rigid with tension. "Ethan," she said, startled by his sudden appearance, "this is Oliver Monroe. We were just discussing the Heritage Art Foundation." Ethan's eyes never left Oliver's face. "Monroe, I know who you are." Oliver extended his hand, unperturbed by Ethan's hostile tone. "Mr. Blackwood, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Your wife is quite remarkable. You're a very lucky man." Ethan ignored the offered handshake. Instead, he placed his hand on Isabella's waist, pulling her firmly against his side. The touch was possessive, claiming, completely unlike any contact he had ever initiated before. Isabella's breath caught in her throat, her heart racing from the unexpected intimacy. "My wife and I were just about to dance," Ethan said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "If you'll excuse us." The first dance. Before Isabella could respond, Ethan was leading her onto the dance floor. The orchestra was playing a slow waltz, and couples swayed together in elegant circles. Ethan pulled Isabella into his arms, one hand on her waist, the other clasping her hand. They had never danced together before, not even at their own wedding reception. Isabella's mind was spinning. Ethan's body was pressed against hers, solid and warm. She could feel the tension radiating from him, see the tightness around his mouth and eyes. His hand on her waist felt like a brand, burning through the thin fabric of her dress. "What was that about?" she asked quietly as they moved across the floor. What was what about? His voice was clipped, controlled, but she could hear the edge beneath it. "Your behavior with Oliver. He was just being friendly, discussing art and restoration work." Ethan's grip tightened slightly. "He was flirting with you." Isabella pulled back enough to look into his face. "And what if he was? What difference would it make to you?" The confession. Ethan's eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time in 2 years, she saw raw emotion there. Not the cold indifference she had grown accustomed to, but something hot and fierce and almost frightening in its intensity. "You're my wife," he said, his voice low and rough. "In name only," Isabella shot back, surprised by her own boldness. "You've made it very clear that this marriage is just a business arrangement. You don't talk to me, you don't spend time with me, you barely acknowledge my existence. So forgive me if I enjoyed having a conversation with someone who actually sees me as a person." The music swelled around them, but Isabella was aware only of Ethan's face, of the way his expression was shifting and changing, revealing depths she had never suspected existed. His hand moved from her waist to the small of her back, pressing her closer. "You think I don't see you?" he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. "You think I don't notice every time you walk into a room, every time you smile at something on your phone, every time you leave the penthouse smelling like jasmine and hope?" Isabella's heart hammered against her ribs. "Then why? Why have you treated me like I'm invisible for 2 years?" The dangerous admission. Ethan was silent for a long moment, guiding her through the dance with surprising grace. When he finally spoke, his voice was strained, as if each word cost him something. "Because wanting you would be a distraction. Because getting close to you would be dangerous. Because I convinced myself that keeping you at a distance was protecting both of us from something I'm not sure I know how to handle." The song ended, but neither of them moved. They stood in the middle of the dance floor, lost in each other's eyes, while other couples flowed around them like water around stones. Isabella felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet, as if everything she thought she knew about her marriage was crumbling and reforming into something new and terrifying and exhilarating. "Ethan," she breathed, not sure what she wanted to say. But before she could find the words, Oliver appeared at Ethan's shoulder. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but Isabella, I wanted to give you my card before the evening ends, for that viewing we discussed." The spell shattered. Ethan's face closed down, the coldness returning, but now Isabella could see it for what it was. Not indifference, but armor, protection against feelings he didn't know how to express. Ethan turned to Oliver, and when he spoke, his voice was pure ice. "My wife won't be available for private viewings with you or anyone else. If the Heritage Art Foundation requires consultation on your collection, they can send someone else." The silent drive home. The limousine ride back to the penthouse was suffocating. Isabella sat as far from Ethan as the seat would allow, her arms crossed over her chest, staring out the window at the city passing by in blurred lights. Her mind replayed the scene at the gala over and over. Ethan's possessive grip, his jealous words, his confession that he had noticed her all along, and then his cold dismissal of Oliver, speaking for her as if she had no voice of her own. Ethan sat rigid on his side of the car, his jaw clenched, his hands fisted on his thighs. The air between them crackled with unspoken words and suppressed emotions. The driver seemed to sense the tension, keeping his eyes firmly on the road and raising the privacy screen without being asked. When they finally arrived at the penthouse, Ethan exited first, not waiting to help Isabella out. She followed him into the elevator, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor.
The elevator doors closed, trapping them in the small space together. Isabella counted the floors as they ascended, each number bringing them closer to a confrontation she knew was inevitable. The confrontation. The moment they entered the penthouse, Isabella spun to face Ethan. 2 years of silence, 2 years of loneliness, 2 years of being treated like an invisible obligation came pouring out. "How dare you?" she said, her voice shaking with anger. "How dare you speak for me like that? You had no right to refuse Oliver's invitation on my behalf." Ethan loosened his tie, his movements controlled but tense. "You had every right. You're my wife." "A wife you've ignored for 2 years." Isabella's voice rose, echoing through the spacious apartment. "A wife you've treated like furniture, like something to be displayed when convenient and forgotten the rest of the time. You don't get to suddenly play the possessive husband now." "Watch your tone," Ethan warned, but there was something beneath the coldness now, something volatile and dangerous. "Or what?" Isabella challenged, stepping closer. "Tell me, Ethan, what exactly will you do?"
The truth unleashed. Ethan turned to face her fully, and Isabella saw that his carefully maintained control was fracturing. His eyes blazed with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You want to know what I'll do?" he said, his voice low and rough. "You want to know why I've kept my distance? Because you terrify me, Isabella. You walk into a room and everything else disappears. You smile and I forget what I was thinking. You exist and I want things I have no business wanting." Isabella stood frozen, shock rendering her speechless. Ethan continued, the words spilling out as if a dam had broken. "I watched you tonight, laughing with that man, your face lit up with genuine joy. I've never seen you look at me like that. And do you know what I felt? Rage, pure, irrational rage that someone else could make you smile when I've only ever made you sad." "Then why?" Isabella whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "Why push me away? Why make me feel worthless and alone?" The vulnerable truth. Ethan ran his hand through his hair, the gesture uncharacteristically agitated. He walked to the windows, staring out at the city below, his back to Isabella. "My father was a cruel man," he said quietly. "He married my mother for her family's connections. He used her, controlled her, broke her spirit until she was nothing but a shadow. I watched her fade away year by year, becoming smaller and quieter until she was barely there at all. She died when I was 15, and I swore I would never do that to another person." Isabella's anger softened slightly, understanding beginning to dawn. "So you thought keeping me at a distance would protect me? I thought if I never let you get close, I couldn't hurt you the way he hurt her. I thought if I kept everything businesslike and professional, you could maintain your own life, your own identity. I didn't want to consume you the way he consumed her." "But you did hurt me," Isabella said, her voice breaking. "Every day of silence hurt me. Every night alone hurt me. Every time you looked through me instead of at me, it hurt." The shift. Ethan turned back to face her, and Isabella saw moisture in his eyes, the first real emotion she had ever witnessed from him. "I know, and tonight, watching you with Monroe, seeing you come alive with someone else, I realized I've been a coward. I've been so afraid of becoming my father that I became something just as bad. A ghost of a husband, a man who has everything except the courage to reach for what he truly wants." Isabella's heart pounded in her chest. "And what do you want, Ethan?" He crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides, stopping just inches from her. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell his cologne mixed with something distinctly him. His eyes searched her face as if memorizing every detail. "You," he said simply. "I want you. I want to hear about your day. I want to know what makes you laugh. I want to fall asleep beside you and wake up with you in my arms. I want the right to be jealous when other men look at you the way Monroe did tonight. I want a real marriage, Isabella, not the cold arrangement we've been living." Isabella felt tears streaming down her cheeks,
Part of her wanted to throw herself into his arms, to finally have the husband she had dreamed of. But another part, the part that had suffered through 2 years of loneliness, held back. "You can't just decide this now," she said, her voice trembling. "You can't ignore me for 2 years and then suddenly want everything because another man showed me kindness. That's not love, Ethan. That's possession. That's ego." Ethan flinched as if she had struck him. "You're right," he said quietly. "I have no right to ask for anything from you. I've wasted 2 years we could have spent building something real. But I'm asking anyway, Isabella. I'm asking you to give me a chance to be the husband I should have been from the beginning." "How do I know you won't change your mind?" Isabella asked, wrapping herself around herself. "How do I know that tomorrow you won't go back to treating me like I don't exist? How do I trust you with my heart when you've already broken it 1,000 times?" Ethan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently cupped her face in his hands. His touch was warm, careful, reverent. It was the most intimate contact they had ever shared. "I can't promise I'll be perfect," he said, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I can't promise I won't make mistakes, but I promise I will try every single day. I promise I will see you, hear you, cherish you the way you deserve. I promise that if you give me this chance, I will spend the rest of my life making up for the pain I've caused." Isabella closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his hands on her face, the sincerity in his voice. She had wanted this for so long, dreamed of it during countless lonely nights. But wanting something and trusting it were different things. "I need time," she whispered, opening her eyes to meet his gaze. "I need you to prove that this isn't just jealousy talking, that this isn't just about Oliver Monroe making you realize you don't want another man to have what you've been throwing away." Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand. Take all the time you need. But know this, Isabella. I'm not giving up. I'm not walking away. I'm going to fight for this marriage, for you, with everything I have."
The first step. He leaned forward slowly, and Isabella's breath caught, but instead of kissing her lips, he pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, tender and full of promise. The simple gesture undid something inside her, and she felt fresh tears fall. "Good night, Isabella," Ethan whispered against her skin. "Sleep well." He released her and walked toward his bedroom, pausing at the door. "Tomorrow morning, I'd like to have breakfast with you. A real breakfast, where we talk and get to know each other, if you'll allow it." Isabella nodded, not trusting her voice. Ethan gave her a small, hopeful smile and disappeared into his room, leaving her standing in the middle of the living room, her emotions a whirlwind of hope, fear, anger, and something that felt dangerously like love beginning to bloom. A new beginning. Isabella walked to her own room, her mind racing. She changed out of the emerald gown, hung it carefully in the closet, and prepared for bed. As she lay in the darkness, she thought about everything that had happened. Ethan's confession, his vulnerability, his promise. Could people really change? Could a marriage built on cold obligation transform into something real and warm? She thought about Oliver Monroe and his kind smile, his genuine interest in her work. He represented safety, the attention she craved, a fresh start. But Ethan represented something more complicated. He was her husband, the man she had promised to stand beside. And tonight, for the first time, he had let her see beneath his armor to the wounded man underneath. Isabella didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if she could forgive 2 years of neglect. She didn't know if Ethan's jealousy-fueled awakening would last or fade when the sting of seeing her with another man wore off. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Their marriage would never be the same again. The ice had cracked, and whether that led to a thaw or a complete break remained to be seen. As she drifted towards sleep, Isabella felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. A tiny flicker of hope, fragile as a candle flame in the wind, but burning nonetheless. Tomorrow would be the first day of something new, whether it would be the beginning of the marriage she had always wanted or the end of the one she could no longer endure. Only time would tell. But for tonight, for this one moment, Isabella allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, the man who had ignored her for 2 years might finally learn to love her. The end.